Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I am your host, Paul O'Neid, and please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. If you like the podcast, it helps me a lot. And if you want to comment on it, that would be even better. If there's guests you want to see, let me know. As usual, we are sponsored by Coach's Corner University. We're sponsored by X Factor Labs, Barefoot Shoes, and TC Nutrition, as well as Next Level Strength Co. So if you need links to any of those products, you can find them in the description below. Today, I'm joined for a second time by one of my favorite guests who's been on the podcast, Dr. Lisa Lewis. If you want to listen to Dr. Lewis's first podcast, I'll have a link to it in the show notes as well. But today, we're going to get into a really interesting topic: discipline, motivation, and identity. Dr. Lewis, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me back.
It's my pleasure. So those of you who listen to the podcast know that I do a lot of thinking. And I've been teasing out some ideas about motivation. I've been teasing out some ideas about habit forming and discipline. And I thought, who better to have on than Lisa Lewis? So why don't I start with my theories, and then let's poke some holes in it.
Okay.
So over the course of the last, well, I guess it's done now, but from, the point of my injury to August 13th, I think we did our podcast almost a year ago. So I was in the midst of my recovery.
Okay.
And throughout that process, I got a lot of comments about how disciplined I was and how, motivated people were by the process, which obviously feels good for me. But it got me thinking a lot about discipline because I actually don't consider myself to be a very disciplined person. The reason being is that a lot of the habits that I have are simply part of my identity. They're part of who I am. So when it comes to training 5 days a week or eating 5 meals a day, tracking my food, these aren't things that take me any additional effort than brushing my teeth in the morning. So I've always conceptualized discipline as this level up to where you are. So for me, discipline would come into account if you were, say, a fit person and you decided to do a bodybuilding show. And so you had to level up those habits to achieve a little bit more control. But those people who become bodybuilders, they have the identity of a bodybuilder, now have ingrained those habits, and it doesn't take discipline for them to do those things. I'm wondering what, if any, the research says about the interplay between habits, discipline, and taking on an identity within the different things that you do.
So I might not be poking many holes because you and I are pretty congruent on this. And I love how you're using your language that organically comes from the way you're thinking. And I can do a pretty good job of matchy with theory. Then we'll talk about what the literature looks like. But as you know, the theory of motivation that I love is the self-determination theory, which asserts that there's different qualities of motivation, right? So you have like diesel and unleaded and super unleaded and all these, right? Winter blend, summer blend, all this. So you have these different qualities of motivation. And there's sort of a spectrum from very externally regulated, like you're going to do something because you get a reward or you avoid a punishment, right? And then all the way at the other end of the spectrum is intrinsic motivation, doing it for the joy, doing it for the feeling of effectance, which is basically like ass kickery. So you have those two ends of the spectrum, right? And most people, when they talk about motivation or not having motivation to do certain habits, they are talking about intrinsic motivation, right? But actually, there's a whole bunch of stuff in between trying to get reward and doing something for the joy of it.
Right.
And so there are several high quality, sustainable types of fuel, types of motivation that are technically extrinsic, but I think is where the money's at in terms of health related behaviors. So the highest quality, just if you think one step down from intrinsic, is called integrated regulation. And I think your word would be ingrained regulation,
Mm-hmm.
meaning the person engages in the behaviors that they do because they see those behaviors as integral to who they are as a person. It is part of their identity,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, bodybuilding in particular, there's all kinds of behaviors you have to do that you don't do for joy or pleasure because they're not pleasant and they're not right.
Right.
But you do them because doing those things is demonstrative of your identity or the parts of your identity that you value.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the word ingrained because ingrained takes time. It does not happen with one rep. It does not happen with, 6 weeks of doing an exercise program. This is years and years and years of you developing an identity and developing behaviors that are congruent with that identity and getting a return on that investment that feels good for
Right.
you, right? So the ingrained part is really important because we and a lot of people who are listening who are work in the exercise or fitness industry, like we don't just drink Kool-Aid, we are Kool-Aid. It is ingrained in us. Even if it feels bad to eat chicken breast and broccoli, it feels good to eat chicken breast and broccoli
Right.
because that's who we are. We're people who do that stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
it took us a long time to get there. And so when we're starting with somebody who's novice and they're like, it hurts to exercise and broccoli sucks. And what are you going to put on that chicken breast to make it taste good? They're not wrong.
Oh
It's just that they don't have the identity and the ingrained ritual of getting the return on the investment and then developing an identity that's congruent with those kinds of behaviors.
it's so funny you mentioned broccoli. I was chatting with a friend of mine he's like 6 weeks out from a show. He's like, man, broccoli with everything but the bagel seasoning is the best. And I was like, you're totally 6 weeks out to be thinking
You're
like that.
totally 6 weeks
Yeah.
out. Right.
Um,
Right.
I
So,
love I love the mention of time
mhm.
because one of the things I've always felt is that I think goal setting, I think this plays into goal setting too, because you can set goals for your own personal like validation, like that intrinsic motivation to achieve a specific goal because it's important to you. But you can also choose goals, and it's totally reasonable to choose goals for an extrinsic reward or recognition.
Definitely.
Um, I think what to me, it's whatever gets you started. Because if you don't have a why when you start, eventually you'll find one. If you're working towards it, I think most people need a little bit of guidance, which is why I'm an advocate of having a coach. But that coach should be helping you find that why. And then once you have that why, it kind of makes those ingrained habits a little bit more sticky, I think. Um, but you mentioned the different types of fuel. And
Mhm.
I actually have discussions with people a lot because they're like, intrinsic motivation is everything. I'm like,
Nope.
no, because when you're faced with hardships, you may believe that engaging in whatever behavior it is to get the outcome that you want is the best thing for you intrinsically. But it might take some rocket fuel to get you to do it sometimes.
Mhm.
That whole lift angry or whatever it might be. You might need that sometimes,
Mhm.
but you can't use it all the time.
There you go. That's right. So lower qualities of motivation, you can use them. They might not be the highest quality fuel, right? They might
Mm-hmm.
not be the most sustainable.
Right.
But if somebody comes in and they have a goal of looking good for their high school reunion, and that gets them engaged for 3 to 6 months in training or weight loss goals, that's where they're at. Like you said, that's where they're at. So that's where you start. That's their why. And what the idea is that if they're training every week and they're getting their sets and reps in, guess what? They're going to sleep better. They're going to feel better. Their sex drive is going to go up. Their pant size is going to go down. Their spouse is going to be a little happier. They're going to feel better. The motivation that they have, their why, is going to evolve. It is going to become more internal and less external. So by the time they get to the high school reunion, they want to continue, not because they want to lose 20 more pounds, but because they want to get a body weight pull up or
Mm-hmm.
They want to be able to run around in the backyard and play with their kids, right? So this more evolved, more internalized, maybe not totally intrinsic, but more internalized quality of motivation that is more sustainable.
How does this all relate to like you mentioned the word pleasure, which I thought was interesting
Mm,
because obviously there are things that are inherently pleasurable to us on different levels, right?
hmm.
It could be like physically pleasurable to get a runner's high, but you have to go through the shit of a run to do
Right,
it.
right.
There are things like, the physical pleasure you get from, a sauna at the end of a tough day. Like the sauna might suck, but you're relaxed, you're calm, it feels good. How does the word pleasure work into this whole equation?
Hmm. Well, in some of those examples you gave, the pleasure happens after, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the runner's high, or you might be miserable in the sauna, but feel good out of the sauna. So what gets you in the sauna is knowing I'm going to feel better when I get out, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm going to get an outcome that I want, even though I don't want to do the thing. And
Right.
exercise is the same, right? There's plenty of people out there who are like, I hate exercise, but I want my knees to feel better. And I don't want to have low back pain every time I have to sit at my desk. So I'm going to do what I have to do. So they get the return on their investment. That is extrinsic motivation. They are doing the activity for the outcome that they get. So the activity itself may not be pleasurable. There's a lot of, I mean, most health related behaviors are not pleasurable in
Right.
right?
Yeah.
For the outcome. It is inherently, we work in in an industry where the benefits is it's a long game. You gotta put an investment in to get something out. So by pleasure, I mean more of a hedonic, when somebody like sports are much more intrinsically motivated. People get in the zone or get in a flow state, right? And so right there in that moment, they're just in this completely centered, present, enjoyable state.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Now, coming back to habits
Hmm.
and time, is there, we've all heard the 10,000 hours rule, if you want to get good at a skill.
Hmm.
People throw around durations for habit forming.
Yeah.
Is there an actual timeline for how long it takes for a habit to, hold?
Like 10,000 hours has been debunked,
Right.
but it's not completely wrong because you need a lot of practice,
Mhm.
right? So, for example, sometimes when I've done in person workshops, I've asked people who can play the piano, and maybe one or two people will raise their hands, and I'll say, what was it like when you started playing? Did you like it? They're like, no, I hated it. My mom dragged me and I was miserable and the teacher was mean. Well, what about now? If you went to a friend's house and there was a piano, oh, I love it. Well, why do they love it? It's because they put in all these hours of repetition that was
Okay.
not enjoyable, right? So you got to get your reps in, basically. And I think there's a lot of variation. Like if somebody gets that runner's high the first time they go on a run, then they're
That
going to
doesn't,
be
I can
hooked.
attest that doesn't happen. As a guy
Yeah.
who just started running again, that doesn't happen.
Well, I work with a lot of people who are in recovery from something like drugs or alcohol or something else. And a lot of those folks will take up running. And I'll tell you what, they catch the bug pretty quick. Some of those folks, I would
It's,
say,
listen, I ran a half marathon in college. So that was 20. And I probably run a cumulative 5 kilometers since I was 20. So in the last 18 years. And I think it more has to do with the runway of progression that's possible
Mm,
and seeing progress,
mm,
because that's addicting. Like being like for someone who's competed at a world level in a
yes,
sport, being a
yes.
beginner at something is super addictive. And I'm glad you brought that up because it plays into something else that I wanted to talk about was you mentioned evidence. And one of the things that I hold very strongly to is trying to boost the self-efficacy of my clients. Because ultimately, I believe, and the research that I've seen does back it up, that self efficacy is going to be one of the major predictors of long term sustainability.
Mm.
And the only way that we can build self-efficacy, which for those of you listening who are unfamiliar with self-efficacy, it's your confidence in your competence to achieve a goal. So in order to have confidence, you need evidence of success. So evidence built over time, even if it's tough to do at the start, like running was from, like, I'm 227 pounds. Like, running is not easy. It's a lot of body to move through space.
Mm-hmm.
But every run that I go on, I progress. And the more that I progress, the more evidence that I have that I'm capable of progression. And it
That's right.
becomes more and more and more fun.
Mm-hmm.
So the habit of running has become really sticky. Am I thinking along these lines properly?
Yes, if people have good outcomes, if they have if
Mm,
they see themselves progress, if they feel good in their body afterwards, right? If the data is there. And you're right
okay.
that self-efficacy is very specific. It's about it's confidence about being able to run or being able to lift, right? Like confidence is
Task
like the general
specific.
task specific, that's right.
Okay.
So people need that. And what do you need in order to accumulate a data set is you need repetitions, right? So
Right.
to build competency, coaches are giving informational feedback, right? Like this week you did that much distance or this many reps at this weight. This week, look, you did a little more weight, you did a little more reps, whatever the case may be, right? So you're reflecting that back. Look, you have more competency, you have more ability, you have more strength. And that helps to foster self efficacy.
In what situations do you feel like it's the most challenging for people to ingrain these habits? Because like we've all run in, like, as coaches, we all run into that client who just, even if they're winning, even if they're performing well, even if they're trying to do the thing, it just never gets sticky.
Mm. Hmm.
What's happening there?
Well, could be a variety of things. I mean, number one, people got a lot of balls up in the air. There's a lot of competing variables for people's attention. If they have kids, if they have a stressful job, if they have medical issues, if they are taking care of elderly parents, like life is full. And so people are trying to juggle priorities at the same
Mm,
time. And some people, when they get stressed or when they get overwhelmed, the priority of a caloric deficit might go right down the drain because food is also comfort and stress relieving. Or taking that time for exercise might go right down the drain because that's time they could be with a loved one or finish a presentation that they're really anxious about the next day. So I think the competing demands is just part of the ecosystem that we have to be able to roll with.
hmm
Are you thinking about something specific?
Well, you mentioned the word priorities, and I would say that if there was a superpower that I have, it's prioritization.
Hmm.
One of the questions that I ask all of my clients and all of the coaches that I work with are, if you had to arrange all of your priorities from 1 to 5, with the caveat being that you can never sacrifice something below for something above, how would you arrange your priorities? So, for example,
Mm,
mine at the top is my own mental health, then it's my wife, then it's my family, then it's my training and nutrition, and then it's my business. So that means that I can never choose to do work when my wife needs something that is integral for me to help her with, or that I cannot miss a workout because of work. And I don't expect other people to have the same priorities as me, but that's how I've organized my life. And there are times where I consciously reorganize those priorities,
okay.
but it's a conscious choice and
Uh-huh.
it's not made on the fly.
Uh-huh.
And so when I ask people to do that, they have a really, really hard time.
Yeah.
But it does give me the opportunity post hoc, after potentially they miss a workout or they miss a meal or whatever it might be, to say, hey, did that align with your priorities? What was going through your mind at that point? And then it becomes a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I love that you mentioned priorities as, like, yeah, this could be a barrier. They have competing priorities. But that word, competing priorities, really bothers me. Because if
Mm.
something is prioritized, there's nothing that should be competing with it.
Hmm.
What do you think?
Well, I love the clarity that you have, and there's a level of commitment there.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think there is what's the word? Like agency there of
Yep.
like, my mental health is number one,
Mm-hmm.
period. And mental health, a lot of mental health is really about agency, having agency and exercising your agency in the world. And people struggle with that,
Oh,
exercising their agency.
yep.
So yeah, I mean, I can imagine you coming at someone, a client, and saying, "Hey, what are your priorities? Let's hear them 1 to 5, and like commit to those." And a lot of people really struggling with that.
I find it super valuable. Like ultimately, and this is where I will kind of push back on myself, is that I try to do my best to not instill my own values on other people. I challenge their limiting beliefs, but I will never challenge their values.
Mm,
In saying that, they need to be clear on what those values are. So that's also part of the discussion. Because if you've a great example, and it's just an easy one, if you value Sunday dinner at your parents' house and your mom cooks, none of our nutrition plans will ever include anything that limits your ability to enjoy that meal,
mm-hmm,
because that would be challenging your values. Now I have to get creative as to how we can strategize around that meal and things like that. But
mm-hmm,
then from values, then comes priorities. No one is ever going to be perfect. I am not perfect. But to me, it's the effort, because when we talk about evidence, when we talk about consistency, when we talk about time, people will try to look for the best possible process or the best possible. Now, the best possible has been deemed optimal, which is a complete conflation of the word. But consistency to me is doing mostly the right thing most of the time for a really long time.
mm-hmm.
And that becomes a lot easier of a pill to swallow. And it becomes easier as a coach to teach people how to do that own self reflection, which allows them to exercise their agency. I, I'm like, are you going to push back on me, or is this like, am I good here?
Well, what I hear is your mission statement, your priorities are very clear, and there's a lot of agency there. And we work with people who don't have that going for them, or they're not
Right.
there yet. They haven't had an opportunity to develop that
Mm-hmm.
over time, right? So it's like being just like with your strength, you're progressed to a place where a lot of the people you're coaching just are not.
So then how would you go about creating a framework? Obviously, we could talk about, meeting your client where they're at, creating a runway of progression. But when it comes to, actually, here's a great question, and I don't have an answer, and I haven't really thought about it, is like, what's the end state, and is there one?
No. That's what's so cool about
Yeah.
growth is you never, I mean, are you ever going to be at the gym and like re-rack your weight and be like, I'm done?
I actually did.
But you're still going to the gym, right?
Yeah, I'm just never squatting again because I exploded my kneecaps.
But you're going to do other things again.
Yeah, I'm gonna do other things again.
Yeah.
But that's like, it's funny you said that, because I literally I started working with a coach again, and he's like, okay, so he's a friend of mine, so he's like, what movements do you want to avoid completely? And I wrote, I will never back squat ever again. And it's, the real reason is, I know that I will never be as strong as I was,
Mm,
so I'm just done trying to be.
mm,
Um,
mm.
yeah. So that end state, like, do you ever find people get discouraged by the fact that there is no end state? I find it exhilarating, and I find it exciting,
Mhm.
but I know that some people are like, yeah, I'm going to lose my 10 pounds and then I'm done. I'm like, well, that's not really how it works. How do you
No.
have that conversation with somebody?
I'm trying to think about what that might look like in my experience. I do remember years ago this man calling me to see about working with me in therapy, and he was struggling with his relationship with alcohol. And he was like, "So, could we just book like 6 or 8 sessions and then like I'll be all set after that?" And I was like, "That's not really how it works. You're not going to be
Mhm.
all set with alcohol in 6 to 8 sessions." Um, so maybe that's a comparison I have that's close. I mean, we're never done working on ourselves. We're always a work in progress. That is my part of my philosophy of psychology is organismic, which means we have an organic desire to always advance ourselves, to evolve ourselves. It is just part of the human condition. If conditions are good, to want to gain mastery over different aspects of the environment, gain competency, exercise our autonomy, be connected with others in a way that moves us forward.
I would love to believe that that's universally true. And if I'm thinking of like, obviously, when I think of how to reply to that, I'm thinking through the hundreds of people that I've coached in the past. And I'm also thinking about across time, I actually feel like that's changed.
Mm.
I feel like that desire might be lacking for a lot of people. Do you, and the thought that crosses my mind is it because they think they're too far gone? Is it because they think that their efforts won't be fruitful? Have we convinced them that if they can't do it perfectly, they shouldn't do it at all?
Mm. So I think there are environmental reasons why somebody um, could quit or give up.
Hmm.
Like, shit that goes on in society can be quite disheartening or make you feel like you're never going to get anywhere. And then I think there's internal things like all mental illness is about being stuck. So anxiety is being stuck in worry, depression is being stuck in the past or in sadness, trauma is about being stuck in a negative experience, addiction is about being stuck in a substance, OCDs, being stuck, obsessions, compulsions. So people can get stuck, give up, not be working on themselves. But I would argue there's some pathology going on there. They're not well enough to be in a place to want to grow themselves physically or psychologically. So I think when conditions are right and
Mm.
somebody is in good enough shape, they want to work on themselves.
The word that was jumping out to me as you were talking was expectations.
Mm, say more
Um,
about that.
yeah, the it's front of mind because I'm dealing with it with one of my mentees, but the expectation that you have of a process or even the expectation that you feel you have to live up to, like the expectations of others within a relationship, in this case, coach client or mentee mentor, of, well, I can't live up to those expectations, so I'm not going to try.
Mm,
Or I can't live up to my own expectations, so I feel a ton of shame.
mhm.
Are we as coaches responsible for setting those expectations? I feel like we're responsible for communicating them as clearly as possible, for sure.
Expectations you mean in the coach client relationship, or how do you mean
Yes, and in terms of the client's participation or engagement within that process.
that they have to show up and do the
Yeah.
work? Hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
How much of that relates to the client's perceived sense of agency though, or self-efficacy in that moment?
Mm. So I don't know if this is where you're going, but I'm thinking about, at the start of therapy and probably at the start of coaching, it's probably good to make it clear the person who makes the change is you, the client.
Mhm.
And, I am here as your Sherpa to provide guidance and expertise and some cheerleading along the way. But you are the one who's going to make the change happen. Um, so setting squarely that the person who needs to do the work to make the change is the client, is an important way to set expectations in case there's magical thinking that I'm going to hire you and you're going to make me look whatever my fantasy appearance is, you know?
I think that happens a lot though, because we see it. We see it with people who like coach hop. Like this person's methods are going to
Yeah.
be the one to
Yeah.
solve my problems.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it also that's a hard conversation to have with a client because if you're going to say, "Hey, I'm your guide, and I'm going to put you in the best position possible to succeed," but you're
Yeah.
going to be the one to do the work.
Yep.
That circles all the way back to self-efficacy, motivation to do the work. And a lot of our clients initially, they're like, I need you to motivate me. And
Hmm.
there will be coaches that will be like, that's not my job.
That's right.
I think in the beginning, it kind of has to be your job.
Well,
And
you have to find where is the fuel source and how to tap into that.
mm,
So you got to help them figure out where to stick the crowbar to get some leverage and to get started. Right.
I
So if
love that
somebody's
word.
coming to you and they're like, oh, I'm so frustrated. I want this. I want that. I want that outcome. I've had this failure and that failure, and I just need you to motivate me. They are brimming with motivation. You can hear it in the angst and the frustration and the desire, right? They got a full tank.
Mm-hmm.
They're not able to get that fuel to translate to pushing the pedal down and steering the wheel, right? So
Yeah.
what part of what you're doing is trying to assess, right? How can I help them access that energy so that they can give it force and direction?
Yeah, this is a really interesting conversation because we've talked about a number of different topics, but they all interplay with one another at every point within the client journey.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of coaches, especially younger ones, because I think the coaching field is getting younger and younger.
Yeah.
So you get like, I actually saw a 23-year-old person advertising for life coaching. I know you're laughing because I'm like, bro, you haven't even lived your life yet. Put in your time. So yeah, I mean, I think as younger coaches, we kind of get stuck in seeing things as surface level or as X's and O's and not being able to have those soft skills to dive deeper and have
Mhm.
those
Mhm.
conversations.
Mhm.
Or you may not even have the systems within your coaching to facilitate those kinds of
Mhm.
conversations.
Mhm.
Um, Maybe what's your best advice for coaches who are getting started with new clients? And maybe we shift our conversation to how to set your clients up for success from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I really think a blanket statement I would say to any young coach out there is you need to get training in motivational interviewing.
Oh, yeah, I would
You
agree.
need to develop an understanding that you are not going to be this authority who enters a relationship and disseminates what to eat, how to train, and just do what I say, and then you're going to get the outcome. Because that's not how it works. And if you try to
Mhm.
do it that way, you're going to get frustrated, and you're not going to retain your clients, and your clients are not going to get outcomes. So I think it is a setup because as coaches get trained and as many professionals get trained, you get trained in the X's and O's and like how results happen, and you don't get training on how to actually interact with another human being to help them get the change that they want in their lives. That's the
Yeah.
art form, right?
Yep.
So my step one is like you got to learn how to do the dance,
Mhm.
and that's an art form, and then you need repetitions of that. I think there are plenty of coaches, therapists, helpers out there who don't know everything there is to know about their content area, but who can listen and
Mhm.
who can reflect and who can follow the client's lead to help them develop goals that they're going to have efficacy with, and that is
Yep.
going to help them want to continue to progress whatever that goal set is that they have.
I'm so glad you said that because, selfishly, I'm like, I own an education platform and I would love for you to take some of my courses. But I have very rarely been in a situation, aside from like very fringe cases, maybe like functional health or injuries, which you could argue aren't even within the scope of a coaching practice,
Mm-hmm.
where your X's and O's knowledge has actually prevented you from helping a client. It's it's never been, oh, I didn't prescribe the proper sets and reps. It's
Yeah.
it's I didn't recognize that this person was struggling with X, Y, or Z in their personal life and not sleeping and missing meals and whatever might happen. But I could tell them till I'm blue in the face that they need to eat broccoli with everything but the bagel seasoning on it. But if their life is in shambles, well, I need to cue them to handle that first. See someone like yourself, collaborate with that professional, speak to them like a human being, and then everything else gets easier.
Mm-hmm.
Like, best laid plans aside, we're coaching human beings, and human beings are very, very complex organisms, and they're psychosocial animals. Like, people are going to do people things, and unless you understand people, you can't coach them. At that point, you're just programming.
Amen. And there are plenty of apps and AI systems that can do that very well.
Right.
So people can go on ChatGPT for free and interact for a brief period of time and get a pretty good program. That's not
Absolutely.
what they're coming to work with you for.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming for the care that you can give as a human being and the nuance to being in relationship with them in a way that's going to help them to execute whatever that program is.
This is completely off topic, but how do you feel about people using ChatGPT and AI as their therapist?
Yeah. I feel a couple different ways about it. I feel like talking helps, period.
Mm-hmm.
So if you talking and getting some reflection, like, ooh, that sounds hard. Ooh, that's a rough day. So, you know, now ChatGPT is not going to be able to tell you if it's time to take yourself to the emergency room or what medication is best for you. It's not going to be able to handle a lot of the nuance of diagnosis, of actually treating trauma and conditions. However, I think it could probably triage. It could probably be trained. I think they're using that in Israel right now, is because so many people need mental health intervention because of acute trauma and stress.
Right.
They're using an AI function just to get that initial conversation and then make a referral. Like, maybe you need to talk with this professional or that. So I think there's probably going to be applications,
Mm-hmm.
and we've already seen some kids really using AI as relationship and then ending up completing suicide, some younger adults. So there's a lot of things that need to be addressed and flushed
Mm-hmm.
out. Um, but I do see over the years, it's been, 23, 24 years now, I've been working in counseling, and there are going to be some people out there who it helps just to interact with a bot, basically, because they're getting to verbalize something, they're getting some positive feedback. I mean, I think this is why Noom has been effective for some people, is they just want a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a certain category of people who just needs a little bit, and then they're going to be good to go. But I don't think it's going to, solve everything. And we are certainly going to need people to help people for the rest of eternity.
Yeah. What always gets me about AI is it's a sycophant. So like it just like will tell you that you're right all the time and will gas you up.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it's like, do you really need that if you're in a bad place? I feel like, I mean, maybe some people do.
If
I
your
could,
thinking is screwed up, right, then if it's just going to give you back screwed up thinking, then that's a setup.
right. So I think this is a great like segue into a discussion on like the care involved in the coaching process, obviously, because I personally believe that AI is going to make coaching and probably therapy even more valuable because as AI proliferates our industry, people are going to crave human connection more and more. So I've been thinking about like how can we build in human connection into our coaching practice more? How can we connect with our clients better? How can we inject them into a community that will make them feel welcome and safe? Um, when we're talking about the conversation of motivation, identity, discipline, habits, do you feel like community is a big factor within that?
For some people. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's three ingredients of motivation, and I think about them like macros. So you got
Okay.
protein, fat, and carbs. You got autonomy, competency, and connection or relatedness. Okay.
Okay.
Those are the macros that everybody needs to be fed to be motivated. Now, in the research, what we see is autonomy kind of reigns supreme. It is very
Protein.
important for people to feel like they're driving their own ship. Competency, learning, growing, like you said, building that self-efficacy, right?
Mhm.
That's right up there. They're neck and neck. And then the community relatedness piece is like an it depends, because there's some people who are really hungry for that. Like I'm a group exercise instructor. There are some people who that's their bag. They want to see their friends there. They want to sit next to their buddy. And that connection, that community piece really encourages their motivation to persist. Other people, like, I don't know about you, when I go to the gym, I'm sure half the people there think I'm on the spectrum. I got my headphones in. Can't see anybody. I'm not talking to anybody. I got my game face on. I don't need any connection
Yep.
when
I'm the
I'm
same.
when I'm at the gym. So for me, that's not the setting where I get that need met.
Yep.
So I think it depends. Now, when it comes to coaching, I've heard a lot of different coaches talk about creating, like, I know it's kind of dated, but like Facebook groups, or
Oh
if they
yeah.
have a brick and mortar place, like community outings or get-togethers or potlucks. And I think there's some people who are going to be really into that, and that's really going to like add fuel to that motivation. And then there's going to be other people who like they'll take it or leave it. It's not going to really jazz them up.
I love that you compared it to protein, carbs, and fats because I was like, well, if autonomy is protein and then competence is fats because you need competence and you need fats for health, well, then that community piece is carbs. You can kind of take it or leave it. You can make progress without it. I personally have found that it really comes down to the personality type of your client.
Yeah.
So I coach a lot of, I mean, like all of us, we tend to attract clients who either want to be like us or are in some way, shape, or form where we were 1, 3, 5, 10 years ago. And they want to kind of come up that if it's on a spectrum, to use the word spectrum again, they're somewhere along our life spectrum. And so I get a lot of type A, I get a lot of professionals, I get a lot of people who
Yeah.
really just want to follow the rules and get to where they want to go.
Hmm.
My clients don't want to be in a community.
Hmm.
Whereas Olivia's clients, who tend to be mostly female, but they love having a community feature. They
Yeah.
love interacting with each other, sharing stories.
Yeah.
They find that extremely motivating to almost like a vicarious experience.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and so understanding your ideal client avatar here would be extremely important.
Yeah.
Um, when it comes to that identity piece, does community or environment play into how well you can ingrain that identity? Like if I just took up running, I wouldn't consider myself a runner, but if I put myself in run clubs, would that make it easier for me?
Well, are you like your avatar client where that's a meh for you?
Yeah, it's a
Or are
meh.
you like one of Olivia's clients who like that jazzes you up?
So it's kind of like it could work, but it might have zero effect.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. So that's how I think about the relatedness piece, the connection piece is like, it's not the same as protein. Like, you need autonomy. You need, even especially as a beginner in something, you
Mm,
need to feel like, I want to do this, because you're going to be miserable on your first handful of runs, right? So you need that, I want to do this. I want to be here. Nobody's making me. This is,
yeah.
you need that. And then you need to get some efficacy, to your point earlier. You need to start feeling like, you can run a little further or your pace can get a little better, like you're building that competency. the connection piece, I think where are people getting that met is, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in a fitness setting, it could be elsewhere.
What about as simple as like seeing an example of what you want to achieve? Like, I'm a big believer that as a coach, you have to be the product of your product.
Yeah, that's modeling.
Modeling.
You're
Okay.
kind of a Bandura kind of guy, because Albert Bandura, he is the creator of the expression self-efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
So he says modeling is one way that you show, just exactly what you just said. Um, and so I think your point about a lot of my clients seek me out and hire me because they want what I have
Mm-hmm.
is right. And I've noticed that as I've gotten older, my clients have gotten older, you know, and a lot of my clients are very achievement oriented and probably need more pushing to add recovery than they do to like grind more in their
Yep.
lives, which is kind of matchy to my own journey and my own challenges. So
Same.
I think we attract, right, people who are in that same zone or have a similar kind of type.
Okay.
And modeling, yeah, you can see like if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah. I find that one to be a double-edged sword because, again, coming back to like, if I can do it, you can do it. A lot of the things that I do, I don't think, well, number one, I've done a lot of things that I would never advocate people to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Number two is I don't want to put my values on other people if they're
Mm-hmm.
not congruent with theirs.
Yeah.
Um, and I've also had it backfire where the client feels the expectation to live up to my standard,
Mm.
but they're not there yet. And so
Mm-hmm.
they get discouraged.
Mm. Yeah, so that's where the communication and the relationship part comes in of
Okay.
like, because there's probably a lot of reasons why they're not there yet. It might
Right.
be a progression, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it might be like, I actually don't recommend you do what I did because I almost destroyed myself doing,
Yeah,
X,
exactly.
Y, or Z. And that's just me reflecting on my own, advice that I might give somebody if I were in the advice giving business. I think there's reasons why, right? They aren't going to walk the same path that you walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had I'm just going to share this because I think it's relevant. So I have a client who he's consistently complaining of shoulder pain,
Mm,
but he wants to grow his shoulders.
mm,
And we've done a really good job improving his shoulder function. He's complaining less and less about shoulder pain.
yeah,
But a big way that we've done that is through load management.
yeah,
Just doing a little bit less, but
yeah,
making sure we're getting the most of what we're doing.
yeah.
And he keeps pining for more volume.
Hmm.
And so I come back to, hey, listen, just because we can do more volume in this instance doesn't mean we should because we're getting progress.
That's right.
And he's like, well, you're training 16 times a week. I should be able to do 2 more sets of shoulders. It's like, I'm training 16 times a week, but 11 of my 16 sessions are cardio and I'm not in pain.
Well, there you go.
So, yeah. So it kind of, it doesn't necessarily backfire, but it does give me context at least
Well,
to frame it.
I hear what you're saying.
Mm,
It's a setup, but then it's a setup for the conversation because you don't have shoulder pain, right?
right.
He does, and so you've got to manage load, and that way you get progression. Because if you increase the load and he's injured, well, then you're fucked. You're not
Yeah.
getting any more progression.
Yeah. That's kind of the theme that I'm sensing in our conversation together here today is like, how can we create more cues for a discussion?
Yeah,
And you mentioned motivational interviewing. Like at the core, motivational interviewing is facilitating someone coming to their own conclusions or their own solutions. Because me giving you the solution to the problem is never going to make it sticky.
bingo. Yeah.
Um, so I want to be mindful of your time and I want to revisit my theory on discipline. So
Mm,
I've always looked at the conversation around motivation being like, okay, this is what's going to get you started in participating in a habit. We kind of went over the different types of motivation, intrinsic versus extrinsic, the different things along that spectrum. that you can have, like rocket fuel versus unleaded. Motivation to start the habit. Then once you've started the habit, I think it does take a ton of discipline to continue that habit.
Mm.
But then once that habit becomes ingrained, which is the word that I was looking for at the beginning, and it is just part of your identity, to me, you need to start seeking opportunities to challenge your identity. And this whole framework that I've come to in my own head that makes sense for me was through my surgeries, or through my surgery. Was after my surgery, I could have just melted. I could have just been like, this is awful. I'm in a wheelchair. But because I did have a deeply ingrained sense of self in that I identify as someone who does hard things, I looked at that as a challenge to my identity. I said, well, I'm going to galvanize my identity through this process and I'm going to do the hard things.
Mm-hmm.
So, is that a similar trajectory that, like, from a framework perspective, that you would agree with, where like, let's use some whatever motivation we can to get you started.
Mm-hmm.
Let's teach you how to be disciplined until
Mm-hmm.
it's part of who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, in other words, you're talking about discipline itself being like a characteristic of your identity.
More like a stopgap. It's like we need discipline for a point, but then once it becomes part of who we are in our daily practice, like it's 3:30, I've already trained 3 times. I
Mm-hmm.
was motivated to do 0 of those training sessions.
Mm-hmm.
They were in my calendar, so I did them.
Well, there. So that is, it is integral to you. I am a
Okay.
guy who does shit who's in my calendar. I am a guy who does hard things, right?
Hmm.
Those are statements about who you are as a person. And you got there, you developed those identities by doing a whole lot of repetitions
Right.
of stuff that's hard and stuff that's in your calendar.
Hmm.
Right. So in the beginning, however long ago that was, some of that stuff was fun. And then it got more and more and more and more. The outcome was good. The middle
Hmm.
part of it might not have been that fun. And then you get these really nice, like I think about, you know how a fairy tale has a moral of the story? At the end of the fairy tale, there's a moral of the story.
Yeah.
We develop those in life. We have experiences. We are ourselves out in the world, and there are morals of the story about ourselves and the world. So for you, some of those rules are, I'm a guy who does hard things, and I'm a guy who does stuff in his calendar.
Hmm.
And I love I love discipline. I love to think about discipline
Me too.
because there is a joy in exercising discipline. There is,
Absolutely.
even if you're doing something miserable, there's something that feels really good
Hmm.
about being disciplined for people who that is integral to their identity. So, for example, I deal with a lot of osteoarthritis and like joint pain kind of stuff. So this gym where I teach out of now has a pool. I've been swimming once
Oh,
a week
nice.
for the past 4 years. It's not nice. It's brutal, and I don't like it. I suck
Yeah.
at it. I can't breathe. I cannot wait for it to be over. I don't want to go in. It's cold. It's hard, and I'm bad at it. And I
Hmm.
do it once a week,
Yep.
and I think that's really cool. And in order to get a lane, I have to get up before 5 a.m. to get to the pool. And that's not really any fun. But when I'm driving to do my swim, I feel like the athlete who got to play a sport in college. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm a person who does hard things. And I'm a
Yep.
person who does things I say I'm going to do. And I get a lot of effectance. I get a lot of return on that investment.
I think you and I would get along really well because so I did a workout the other day that had it was like, every 5 minutes do this circuit and you can rest the remainder of the 5 minutes. And I did my first 2 rounds that involved 6 sandbag over the shoulder.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, the sandbag's a little light. I should probably do 8. But it was like, okay, so the rest period was the appropriate length. And so I did 8 for the next 2 rounds, and I had 1 round left. And I'm like, I don't want to finish this workout doing 6, 6, 8, 8. I'm just going to add 8 more reps to my last round so that it was 8, 8, 8, 8, or 4 more reps to my last round. So it was 8 across the board.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to, I think it was like 12. And I'm like, well, I'm not just going to do 12. I got to get to 15. And then I did 15, and I was like, well, I can't do one more rep on one of my shoulders. I'm just going to do 20. And I finished. And at the time, I'm like, obviously my heart rate got up to 170.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, this
Wow.
didn't feel good. But at the end of it, I was like, oh, I did something really hard. That felt awesome.
Mm-hmm. But for you and me, we can arrive at that moment and we can do that thing in that moment because of all of the reps
Right.
and the positive experience and the return on investment that
Mm-hmm.
we have had in the decades leading up to that moment. And a lot of the people that we're trying to help don't have that resume. They don't have all of those reps in their memories.
How valuable do you think it is to put people in that situation when that person is maybe afraid of their capacity? I think, and the way I'm going to frame that is like, I think a lot of the people that come to us for fitness help don't actually know how capable they are. So
Mm,
by us putting them in these challenging positions, we allow them, at least in one arena, to showcase their capabilities.
mm,
And I think that I've always believed that that transfers over to life.
I think we can send friendly invitations,
Okay.
right?
See, yeah.
And then they need to exercise agency to put themselves in it. Like
Mm,
I teach spinning and I say, listen, you can sit on your bike and do jack shit for the next 40 minutes. You could make an ugly face and like look like you're working really hard and you don't have to work hard. That is totally up to you. I'm just up here sending friendly suggestions. And you know what most people do is they kick their very own ass
yeah.
because that moment is there. And I'm sure there's people who are hungover or not recovered and who take it easy, and they really needed that on that day, maybe, or they're just not
Hmm.
ready to work hard. But I think it's not up to us to put them in those situations. They need to put themselves, and we can like create the moment, right? Create the setting. Like, how about this workout? How about that
Oh,
interval? How about these sets and reps? Like, ooh, that might be challenging, but I think you could do it. And then they step in to that.
I love that. I'm actually, so me being in a position to be a beginner again, I'm seeing a lot of the same behaviors that you're talking about
Uh-huh.
in my own
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting for me because I haven't been a beginner in a long time. But like, so for example, last week I did my 2 longest runs that I've done, which was just 20 minutes and at whatever pace. And
Hmm.
I decided to try and push the pace. But my middle workout was 4 rounds of 4 minutes running, 2 minutes walking. It was supposed to be
Hmm.
an easy workout.
Hmm.
But I found myself, instead of walking during those intervals, just
Hmm.
slowing down to a trot. And I
Hmm.
was like, well, I'm supposed to walk, but I want to explore my fitness. I felt motivated to kind of push the envelope a little bit. And I could say, no, I'm just someone who does hard things and I wanted to make my workout harder.
Hmm.
But that's not like, in reflecting in our conversation, that's not at all what it was. It was just, I just want, like, this is a friendly invitation. I just want to explore my fitness a little bit more, explore my capacity.
Hmm.
And then that payoff at the end of the workout saying, like, oh, you actually ran for 26 minutes straight. Those smaller intervals were slow, but you were still running.
Yeah.
I showed myself that I could run for 26 minutes straight.
Hmm.
I'm like, man, if we could foster that within our clients on a like continuous basis, how much could they actually achieve?
Well, that's curiosity that I hear from you, right? So
Yeah.
curiosity is a very open mindset. It's a positive mindset instead of like, shit, I have to do this many more, right? Like
Right.
I have to versus like, I wonder, right? So that curious open mindset really facilitates growth.
Yeah. I any parting words of wisdom about discipline and identity that you've got?
You got to get your reps in.
Yep.
That's it. Like if you're jealous, if you see somebody who has something and you want it, you got to just practice doing that. Like they say, you gain self-esteem by engaging in esteemable acts. So that, to me, a lot of life is about like practicing shit that you want to do or be, and
Yeah,
just getting your reps in.
I love it. Lisa, I really appreciate your time. This was awesome for me to kind of flesh out some ideas, and I have a feeling I'll have a few more.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's really, really fun to
Yeah.
talk to you, and to hear you talk about concepts in your own organic way that really line up with theories and topics that are near and dear to my heart that I've thought a lot about too.
Oh, it's my pleasure. How are the courses going? Your level 1, level 2?
Oh yeah, they're going great. Thanks for asking. Psych Skills for Fit Pros Volume 1 remains kind of like the most popular course.
Okay.
That one is motivational interviewing, understanding the nature of change and understanding motivation. It's really like nuts and bolts of like understanding your clients. Volume 2, I think, is a tougher sell because it's about coaches understanding themselves and their own psychology and looking inward. And I think it's harder to look at ourselves than it is to
Oh
look at
yeah.
other people. I really love that course because I had to work really hard to develop that content. It's not like there's textbooks on that out there. Like a lot
Right.
of it is like original content that I worked to try to bring to personal trainers. And so the feedback that I get is really good, but the pool of people who are like reaching out for that is smaller, I think, because it's really coaches who are ready to like do some work
Yeah.
and some looking at themselves.
Yeah, and listen, like I can't recommend enough, and I have recommended your courses to a number of coaches who are like,
Thank you.
"Yeah, I'm thinking about doing this certification," and I'm like, "You don't need a cert. You do not need more programming help. You need to learn how to talk to people.
Mhm.
Go take this course."
Yeah, thank you.
The disheartening thing for me is I don't think many of them have registered,
Mhm.
which is it's going to be a limiting belief that I hope that conversations like this can bring light to, because
Mhm.
the real change that we can create for people is not with a barbell, it's between their ears.
Mhm.
So,
Amen. Thank you very
listen,
much.
I appreciate you so much. Where can people find you?
Please find me at my website, drlewisconsulting.com. You can find the course at psychskillsforfitpros.com. And of course, I'm on Instagram at Dr. Lewis Consulting.
If you want to see some badass trap bar deadlifts, go follow Lisa.
Aw, thank you. That means a lot coming from you.
No problem. Thank you everyone for listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.